Have you ever felt like the more you think deeply, the more isolated you become? That the more you understand, the less people want to listen? It's not just in your head. Society has always feared deep thinkers, not because they are wrong, but because they see what others don't want to. History proves it from Socrates to N, from Galileo to Tesla. Brilliant minds have been ridiculed, silenced, or ignored. Not because they lacked intelligence, but because they made people uncomfortable. Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers, believed that intelligence itself was a curse, one that isolates those who see the world too clearly. But why does this happen? Why does society resist those who think differently? The answer lies deep within human psychology. Think about this: when you stand next to someone who is physically strong, you don't necessarily feel weak. You admire their strength. When you meet someone who is rich, you might envy them, but you don't feel personally attacked. But when you encounter someone who is intellectually superior, something strange happens. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. A deep thinker does not just introduce new ideas, they reflect back the limitations of those around them. And people don't forgive that easily. The mere presence of someone who thinks deeply can make others feel inadequate, even if the deep thinker says nothing at all. But why does this happen? Why does intelligence, more than any other kind of superiority, provoke such discomfort? To understand this, let's consider how our minds process different forms of superiority. When someone is physically stronger, we might see them as a leader or protector. When someone is wealthier, we might admire their success or aspire to achieve something similar. These qualities, strength, wealth, beauty, are external. We recognize them, but they don't necessarily challenge our core self-perception. However, intelligence operates differently. Unlike physical strength or material wealth, intelligence is deeply tied to identity. We define ourselves by our thoughts, our beliefs, our understanding of the world. When we meet someone who thinks on a deeper level, someone who questions what we take for granted, it can feel like a direct attack on our sense of self. Instead of admiring intelligence, many people subconsciously resist it, not because the deep thinker is arrogant or dismissive, but because their very presence forces others to confront their own limitations. This is why throughout history, deep thinkers have been pushed to the fringes of society. Their insights don't just challenge ideas, they challenge egos and human beings. By nature, will do almost anything to protect their ego from discomfort. Take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever tried to introduce a deep or complex idea in a casual conversation, only to be met with blank stares or awkward silence? Have you ever noticed how people quickly shift topics when discussions move beyond surface-level chatter? This is not just coincidence. It's a defense mechanism. When people encounter a deep thinker, their mind goes into self-preservation mode. Instead of being curious, they resist. Instead of engaging, they dismiss. This is why intellectuals, philosophers, and visionaries often find themselves isolated, not because they want to be alone, but because society pushes them away. Interestingly, studies show that confidence is often valued more than intelligence. In social settings, people are naturally drawn to those who project certainty, even if their ideas are shallow. This is why charismatic but simplistic thinkers gain more influence than deep thinkers who speak with nuance. History is full of examples: populist leaders, motivational speakers, and viral influencers who thrive by telling people what they want to hear, rather than challenging them to think critically. Meanwhile, those who question widely accepted beliefs often struggle to find a broad audience. This is the paradox of intelligence. The more someone seeks truth, the more they become disconnected from the majority. The mirror effect does not just reflect society's limitations, it highlights why society resists change in the first place. But the question remains: if intelligence is so threatening, is there scientific proof that people actually fear it? Modern neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inferior, their brain's amygdala, the region responsible for fear and threat detection, becomes highly active. In simple terms, deep thinking is not just intimidating, it triggers a primal survival response, similar to what we feel when facing danger. But why does intelligence activate the same fear circuits as a physical threat? The answer lies in how human brains evolved for most of human history. Survival depended not on being the smartest person in the room, but on being accepted by the group. Our ancestors thrived in tribes where social harmony meant safety. Being rejected by the group could mean death, as isolation led to vulnerability. This is why human brains are wired for social acceptance over intellectual pursuit. When someone highly intelligent enters a social setting, They unknowingly disrupt the tribal balance. Their presence challenges existing ideas, social norms, and group dynamics. This triggers the brain's defense mechanism as if facing a potential enemy rather than just a deeper thinker. This is why many deep thinkers feel isolated, not because they lack social skills, but because their intelligence makes them stand out in a world that values fitting in. Overstanding out, a 2021 study at Stanford University uncovered something even more shocking. The projection of deep thinkers is context-dependent. When people interact with an intellectual one-on-one, they feel less threatened, but in group settings, the threat response spikes dramatically. Why? Because social status becomes more important in groups. People don't just react to intelligence itself, they react to how others perceive them in comparison. If someone feels outshined by a deep thinker, they instinctively try to undermine or exclude them to protect their social standing. This explains why deep thinkers often find genuine conversations in private settings, but struggle to engage in large social environments. Psychologists have identified several cognitive biases that further explain why intelligence is often met with resistance. The Dunning-Kruger effect. People with low ability often overestimate their intelligence, while highly intelligent people tend to doubt themselves. This creates friction. Those who know little often believe they know more than they do, leading them to dismiss deeper thinkers' status quo bias. The human brain prefers familiar ideas over new, complex truths. Intelligence often introduces disruptive thoughts which make people uncomfortable. The backfire effect. When people are confronted with information that contradicts their beliefs, they don't change their minds. They double down on their existing views. Deep thinkers often face this reaction when they introduce challenging ideas in the digital age. Social media has amplified this rejection of intelligence. Algorithms prioritize engagement over depth, meaning that controversial, emotionally charged content spreads faster than thoughtful, well-reasoned arguments. Take a look at the most viral content. Simple, catchy, and often misleading sound bites outperform nuanced discussions. The more intellectual someone is, the harder it is for them to compress deep ideas into bite-sized, viral-friendly content. As a result, society increasingly favors entertainment over enlightenment, making it even more challenging for deep thinkers to find widespread acceptance. So what does this mean for deep thinkers? The rejection of intelligence isn't just social, it's biological, psychological, and cultural. It is built into human nature, reinforced by group dynamics and magnified by modern technology. This doesn't mean deep thinkers should stop sharing their ideas, but it does mean that they need to understand the forces working against them. But if society resists intelligence, what does it actually embrace? The answer lies in comfort, a world where predictability is preferred over truth. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers in history, believed that intelligence is not a gift, but a curse. Unlike other thinkers who saw intelligence as the key to success, Schopenhauer argued that the smarter a person is, the more they will struggle to connect with society. But why? What makes intelligence such a burden? Schopenhauer's philosophy was built on a concept he called the will, a blind, irrational force that drives all human behavior according to him. Most people live their lives controlled by the will to live, meaning they seek pleasure, comfort, and survival above all else. However, highly intelligent people operate differently. Instead of blindly following instincts, they develop the will to truth, an insatiable desire to understand reality, even if it leads to discomfort. Regular people seek pleasure and avoid difficult truths. Deep thinkers seek truth even if it leads to pain and isolation. This creates a fundamental disconnect between intellectuals and the rest of society, where most people find meaning in relationships, entertainment, and routine pleasures. Deep thinkers often feel disillusioned with these things, seeing them as distractions from deeper existential questions. Schopenhauer believed that the more a person understands human nature, the harder it is for them to relate to others. They see through lies and deception. Most social interactions involve small talk, status games, and polite dishonesty, and deep thinkers who value truth over appearance often struggle to participate in this. They crave depth, but society favors simplicity. Most people prefer surface-level conversations, while deep thinkers crave meaningful discussions. This makes it difficult for them to engage in everyday interactions without feeling bored or disconnected. They recognize the futility of human desires. Schopenhauer saw desire and ambition as illusions. He believed that most people chase money, power, and relationships, but deep thinkers often question the very purpose of these pursuits. This makes them appear distant or indifferent to what excites the majority. This is why intelligent people often feel misunderstood, alienated, or even resented their mere presence. forces others to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves, and most people would rather avoid that. Schopenhauer compared intelligence to a heightened sense of awareness, a blessing that feels more like a curse. He wrote, a high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. His reasoning was simple. The more you understand, the less you can ignore. The more aware you are of the world's flaws, the harder it is to find happiness in it. The more you think deeply, the lonelier you become. For Schopenhauer, happiness and intelligence were inversely related. He believed that ignorance, not wisdom, was the true key to happiness. This is why deep thinkers throughout history and Pascal Caffat have often struggled with depression, existential crisis, and social isolation. Schopenhauer did not just diagnose the problem, he also offered solutions. He believed that while intelligence leads to loneliness, there are ways for deep thinkers to cope with their isolation. Embrace solitude. Schopenhauer saw solitude not as a punishment but as a privilege. He believed that deep thinkers should use their alone time for intellectual and creative pursuits, rather than seeking validation from society f like-minded individuals. Instead of trying to fit into mainstream society, Schopenhauer advised intelligent people to seek out those who think like them. Whether through books, philosophy, or exclusive intellectual circles, engage with the world wisely. He warned against blindly sharing deep insights with people who weren't ready for them. Instead, he suggested that thinkers observe society, learn its patterns, and choose their words carefully. His teachings serve as a guide for modern deep thinkers struggling with social rejection. While intelligence may lead to loneliness, it also grants freedom, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of life. Schopenhauer saw intelligence as a double-edged sword, a source of both power and pain. While it allows one to see reality more clearly, it also distances them from those who prefer illusions in the end. Schopenhauer's philosophy confirms what we already suspect. Society doesn't fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence reveals. Deep thinkers aren't rejected because they are wrong. They are rejected because they are right too soon. So if you've ever felt alone in your thoughts, know this: you are not broken. You are simply seeing the world for what it really is. But does this mean deep thinkers are doomed to isolation? Or are there ways to navigate society while preserving intellectual depth? The truth is, society isn't built to embrace deep thinkers. It's built to maintain stability. Most people prefer comfort over truth. That's why shallow conversations, simple ideas, and repetitive content dominate social spaces. But why is comfort prioritized over intellectual depth? Why does society resist change even when that change leads to progress? The answer lies in how human psychology is wired and how institutions shape our thinking from an early age. At its core, the human brain craves certainty and predictability. Evolution has programmed us to avoid mental discomfort, a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive ease. The brain prefers simple, familiar information because it requires less mental energy to process when an idea is complicated, nuanced, or unfamiliar. The brain perceives it as difficult and potentially dangerous. System justification theory. This explains why people defend the status quo even when it works against them. Instead of questioning authority or outdated beliefs, most people prefer to rationalize them because change feels too uncertain. Groupthink people would rather conform to widely accepted beliefs than risk social rejection by challenging them. This is why the majority tends to reject intellectual dissent even when it's based on truth. This deep psychological preference for comfort over complexity is why intellectuals, philosophers, and scientists often struggle to gain mass acceptance, especially during their lifetimes. Take a look at today's digital world. Who gets the most attention on social media? Not the intellectuals, but those who can reduce complex ideas into viral feel-good sound bites. Thought-provoking discussions struggle to gain traction because depth takes time, while viral content is instant, emotional, and easy to digest. Algorithms reward engagement, and nothing engages people more than controversy, outrage, or humor, all of which often sideline rational intellectual discourse. Echo chambers develop, where people are exposed only to information that reinforces their existing beliefs, making them resistant to new perspectives. In this environment, deep thinkers who challenge the mainstream narrative often find themselves ignored, misunderstood, or even attacked. This rejection of deep thinking doesn't just happen online. It begins in the very institutions that shape our minds: schools and workplaces, education system. Schools claim to value intelligence, but in reality, they reward obedience over independent thought. Students who memorize and regurgitate information succeed, while those who question or challenge the authority are often labeled as troublemakers. Workplaces. The corporate world doesn't favor the most intelligent or innovative employees. It favors those who fit the culture and maintain the existing power structure. Politics leaders who make bold, unpopular statements rooted in logic often lose to those who simply tell people what they want to hear. This explains why the most celebrated intellectuals in history were outcasts during their lifetimes. Their ideas were seen as disruptive rather than valuable. Society claims to value intelligence, innovation, and critical thinking, but in reality, it only celebrates these qualities after they are safe and widely accepted. Consider these examples. Galileo was imprisoned for his discoveries. Today, we praise him as a scientific genius. Van Gogh died in poverty, yet his paintings are worth millions now. Nikola Tesla revolutionized energy, but lived and died in obscurity. Society does not embrace intelligence when it challenges the norm. It only celebrates it in hindsight once it's no longer threatening. So if deep thinkers struggle to be accepted, what can they do? If you have ever felt misunderstood for thinking deeply, you are in good company throughout history. Some of the most brilliant minds were not celebrated during their lifetimes. They were ridiculed, persecuted, or ignored. Their ideas were seen as dangerous, disruptive, or simply too difficult for society to accept. At the time, these thinkers had one thing in common. They were ahead of their time, and because of that, they suffered for their wisdom. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, spent his life questioning commonly held beliefs. He challenged people to think critically, to examine their own ideas, and to embrace logic over blind tradition. But instead of being celebrated for his wisdom, he was put on trial for corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. His real crime, encouraging people to think for themselves. Despite being given the option to escape, Socrates chose to drink poison rather than abandon his principles. His famous words before his death, "The unexamined life is not worth living." His death sent a clear message. Society fears those who challenge its core beliefs. Galileo's only crime was discovering the truth when he proved that the earth revolves around the sun. He shattered centuries of religious dogma. The church, which held power through controlling knowledge, branded him a heretic. He was forced to publicly deny his own discoveries under threat of torture. Even though we now recognize him as one of history's greatest scientists during his lifetime, he lived under house arrest. His work banned for nearly a century. Galileo's story proves that even the most undeniable truths will be rejected if they threaten the existing power structure. Nietzsche's work was considered too radical, too unsettling. He argued that traditional morality was flawed, that society was built on comforting lies, and that true strength came from creating one's own values. At the time, these ideas were too much for people to handle. He was dismissed as insane, his works ignored or misunderstood. Yet today, N's philosophy influences psychology, literature, and existentialism. His ideas on power, will, and morality now shape modern philosophy, proving that society often rejects deep thinkers in the present, only to embrace them in the future. Tesla was a visionary. He dreamed of free energy for the world, wireless electricity, and technological advancements that could have revolutionized human civilization, but society, and more specifically those in power, saw his ideas as a threat. Industrialists like Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan profited from selling electricity, so Tesla's idea of free energy was shut down. Despite his genius, Tesla died alone in a small hotel room, forgotten and broke, while others built fortunes using his stolen ideas. His life is a perfect example of how society often rewards businessmen and marketers over true visionaries. Alan Turing's work in cryptography helped end World War II. His code-breaking skills saved millions of lives. His theories in computing became the foundation of modern artificial intelligence. Yet instead of being honored, he was persecuted for his personal life in 1952. He was chemically castrated for being gay, a decision that led to his tragic suicide at just 41 years old today. Turing is recognized as a hero, but in his time, society discarded him despite his incredible contributions. While most historical deep thinkers were men, Hippa of Alexandria was a rare exception, a philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer who challenged the male-dominated intellectual world of ancient Rome. She taught scientific reasoning and rational thought, which put her at odds with the religious authorities in the year 415 AD. A mob of religious extremists brutally murdered her, seeing her as a threat to their power. Her story highlights a crucial pattern in history. Intellectual progress is often met with violent resistance. Each of these thinkers shared the same fate. They introduced ideas that were too advanced for their time. They were rejected, ridiculed, or punished while they were alive. Their ideas later became the foundation of human progress. Society doesn't fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence represents change. And that raises an important question. If history proves that society resists deep thinkers, what can you do if you're one of them? Does this mean deep thinkers are doomed to loneliness? Not at all. It just means you need to understand how to navigate society wisely. Not every place or person is ready for deep conversations. Save your most profound thoughts for people who truly appreciate them. You don't need millions of people to understand you, just the right ones. Seek out those who think like you. Whether in books, online communities, or intellectual circles, the greatest thinkers in history found ways to make deep ideas accessible. Einstein said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." Learn to communicate your depth without overwhelming others. Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Deep thinkers see the world differently, and that will always make some people uncomfortable. But that does not mean you should stop thinking deeply. Society needs deep thinkers. It just doesn't always know how to embrace them. So if you have ever felt like an outsider for your thoughts, remember this: you are not alone. And while society may fear deep thinkers, it is deep thinkers who push humanity forward. If this video resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced rejection for thinking deeply? Let's start a conversation. And if you want to explore more insights from history's greatest minds, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.